During a fishing trip, a man spots a mama bear walking towards him with a cub in her teeth. He is scared to see her approach, but then she nudges her baby towards him, begging him to save it. Over the next few days, something shocking happens. As he fished by his favorite spot in the forest, Lucas suddenly spotted a dark figure approaching him from the riverbank's edge. His heart skipped a beat when he realized it wasn't a person but a large brown bear. Lucas squinted, trying to make sense of the scene before him, and his breath hitched as he recognized the tiny, limp form of a bear cub held between her teeth. The cub was in distress, its little sides heaving weakly. Lucas's first instinct was to retreat. Bears were common in the area, but they usually kept their distance. This close encounter was unlike anything he had experienced. He knew that there was no place in the world more dangerous than between a mother bear and her cub, and he wisely retreated. Yet, as he took a cautious step back, the bear did something astonishing. She made no move to attack or defend. Instead, her large dark eyes met his, filled with an unmistakable plea for help. Lucas froze. Was this bear truly begging him to help her cub? No, it couldn't be. Bears rarely interact with humans, and they usually retreat when they're wounded. And yet, here she was, whimpering softly. The massive bear gently placed her dying cub on the forest floor, nudging it towards Lucas with her nose. When she saw him hesitate, she sat back and waited. Lucas realized that the big bear was trying to appear as unthreatening as possible. His fear was quickly replaced by a sense of awe and then urgency. He had no experience with bear cubs or how to help one, but he knew he couldn't turn his back on this duo, not after they'd put so much trust in him. He remembered an old, unused shed behind his cabin that stored a basic first aid kit and some old blankets. Without a second thought, Lucas signaled to the mama bear with a calm, gentle voice, trying to convey his intention to help. Surprisingly, the bear seemed to understand. She stepped back, allowing Lucas to scoop the cub into his arms gently. The little creature was so frail, so delicate, that it stirred something protective in Lucas. He rushed to his cabin, the mama bear following at a distance, her presence a silent watch over her cub. Inside, Lucas laid the cub on a soft blanket and examined it as best he could. There were no visible injuries, but the cub was clearly suffering. Lucas cleaned its body with warm water, trying to stimulate a reaction, but nothing happened that could help him understand what was going on with the little bear. Realizing the situation was beyond his capabilities, Lucas's thoughts raced for a solution. Then it hit him. Dr. Amelia Hayes, a wildlife veterinarian he had met a few years back during a local conservation meeting. She might be their only hope. Lucas found her number on a faded conservation flyer pinned to his fridge. His fingers crossed as he dialed, hoping she would answer. When she did, he suddenly realized his story might sound a little too crazy for her to leave, but he had to try anyway. "Ah, Dr. Hayes, it's Lucas Miller," he said, hoping she'd remember him. "I have a bear cub here. It's in bad shape, and its mother brought it to me. I think it needs immediate care. Can you come?" Lucas's voice was steady, but the gravity of the situation weighed heavily on him. He hoped that she would believe him and not think him a lunatic, but he knew that if a friend ever called him with the same request, he would immediately think of a prank. There was a brief silence on the line, and Lucas feared that the veterinarian would hang up. In her place, he probably would have. But then Dr. Hayes' calm, confident voice filled the room. "Keep the cub warm. It will take me about an hour to get there." As Lucas ended the call, he glanced outside. The mama bear was still there, her gaze fixed on the cabin. In that moment, he felt an unspoken bond form between them, a mutual understanding and a shared concern for the cub's fate. He returned to the little bear's side, watching its small chest rise and fall with more strength than before. Lucas allowed himself a small smile, hope kindling within him. Perhaps with Dr. Hayes' help, they could save this cub. For now, all he could do was wait and provide warmth and comfort to the little life that fate had unexpectedly placed in his hands. The hours stretched endlessly before Dr. Amelia Hayes finally arrived, her arrival heralded by the crunch of gravel under tires. Lucas hurried to meet her, his heart caught between hope and dread. With her gear in tow, Dr. Hayes wasted no time, her professional gaze quickly assessing the scene before her. The cub, now wrapped in a warm blanket, seemed to have gathered a bit of strength, but its condition was far from stable. Dr. Hayes' examination was thorough, her hands gentle yet efficient as she listened to the little bear's heartbeat, checked its gums, and felt for any hidden injuries. Lucas watched, holding his breath, hoping for good news. After a tense few minutes, Dr. Hayes straightened up, her expression grave. "Lucas," she began, her voice carrying a weight that instantly filled the room with dread. "This cub is suffering from more than just physical trauma. It's been poisoned, likely from ingesting something toxic in its environment. Its condition is critical, and without immediate and aggressive treatment, I'm not sure it will survive the night." The words struck Lucas like a physical blow, the dire diagnosis echoing loudly in the silent cabin. Poisoned. The word itself was a harsh intruder, bringing with it a sense of injustice and anger. How could such a young life already be on the brink of death due to human negligence? Seeing the despair in Lucas's eyes, Dr. Hayes quickly added, "There's still hope. I've brought antitoxins and IV fluids. We need to start treatment right away and pray it's not too late." Her voice, firm and determined, cut through Lucas's shock, galvanizing him into action. Together, they worked to administer the antitoxin, setting up a makeshift IV drip to hydrate and support the cub's frail body. The mama bear, watching them from the window, seemed to sense the urgency, her gaze never wavering from the fragile form of her cub. As the medicines slowly dripped into the cub, Lucas found himself praying to any deity that would listen, begging for the life in his hands to cling on. He felt strangely responsible for the little bear, even though he had nothing to do with the dire circumstances that had almost killed it. The fact that its mother had brought it to him meant something to him, and he was determined not to fail any of them. Dr. Hayes monitored the cub's vital signs, her face a mask of concentration. Hours passed. The only sound in the cabin was the steady beep of the heart rate monitor and the crackling fire. Lucas and Dr. Hayes took turns caring for the cub, neither willing to rest while its life hung in the balance. The night wore on, and the cub's condition began to stabilize. Its breathing grew stronger, and the faintest hint of color returned to its gums. Dr. Hayes finally allowed herself a small smile. "It's responding to the treatment," she whispered, exhaustion and relief mingling in her voice. "We're not out of the woods yet, but this is a good sign." Lucas felt a wave of gratitude so intense it left him momentarily breathless. He whispered a thank you to Dr. Hayes, to the mama bear outside, to the cub for fighting so hard to stay alive. In that moment, the cabin felt like a sacred space, a tiny haven against the darkness outside. However, the tranquility of their success was abruptly interrupted. Dr. Amelia's phone rang, slicing through the quiet afternoon with an urgency that immediately set Lucas's nerves on edge. He watched as her expression turned from one of curiosity to concern, her brow furrowing as she listened to the voice on the other end. She ended the call and turned to Lucas, her eyes reflecting the gravity of the situation. "That was the clinic," she began, her voice laced with reluctance. "A cheetah has just been admitted. It's in critical condition, and they need me back immediately." Lucas could see the conflict written all over Dr. Amelia's face. She was torn between her duty to the wildlife she had dedicated her life to saving and the bear cub that had become a symbol of hope and resilience. "I have to go," she eventually said, her decision made, though not easily. "I've stabilized the cub, and it's showing signs of recovery. You've been an excellent caretaker, Lucas. I believe you can manage from here." The announcement sent a wave of panic through Lucas. Despite the progress they had made, the thought of handling the cub's care alone was daunting. Yet, seeing Dr. Amelia's determination to tend to another life in peril reminded him of the commitment they both shared toward these creatures. "Go," Lucas found himself saying. I'll take care of our little fighter here. You're needed there." With a plan hastily put in place for Lucas to contact her should anything go awry, Dr. Amelia packed up her equipment and left for the clinic, her departure marked by a silent promise to return if the cub's condition changed. In the days that followed, Lucas found himself stepping into the role with a newfound sense of purpose. He followed Dr. Amelia's instructions to the letter, monitoring the cub's diet, ensuring it stayed hydrated, and providing the warmth and comfort it needed to recover fully. As he adapted to his new responsibilities, Lucas also kept in touch with Dr. Amelia, who updated him on the cheetah's condition. It was a difficult battle, she confessed, but one that was slowly turning in their favor, thanks to the immediate care they were able to provide. Dr. Amelia later returned to join Lucas, her spirit boosted by the initial progress of the cheetah she had attended to. Seeing the cub's consciousness return, she cautioned, "It's a positive sign, but recovery will be slow. It will need careful monitoring and a safe environment to regain its strength fully." The words were a sobering reminder of the journey ahead. The cub had survived the night, but its path to recovery would be long and uncertain. Lucas knew then that he was committed to seeing this through, not just for the cub, but for the wild that had somehow found its way to his doorstep, trusting him with its most precious life. As the sun rose higher, casting warm light into the cabin, Lucas stepped outside to share the news with the mama bear. She was still there, her gaze fixed on him. He knew that she couldn't understand a word he said, but in that moment, Lucas vowed to keep protecting her cub, to fight for it as she had, to honor the trust she had placed in him. The day passed in a haze of cautious optimism. Lucas and Dr. Amelia took turns feeding the cub and ensuring it stayed hydrated. With each passing hour, the cub's vitality seemed to return, its movements more vigorous, its cries louder. As the cub grew stronger, discussions turned to its future. "We need to start preparing for its return to the wild," Dr. Amelia stated, her tone bittersweet. "It's important for it to reintegrate with its natural habitat, especially now that we know it has the strength to survive." Lucas knew she was right, but a part of him dreaded the moment they would have to say goodbye. He had grown attached to the little bear, its will to live igniting a spark within him he hadn't felt in years. They decided to wait a few more days, giving the cub time to gain strength and ensuring it would be ready for the challenges of the wild. Lucas used this time to make the necessary arrangements, consulting with local wildlife experts and preparing a safe area in the forest for the cub's release. The mama bear, ever watchful, seemed to sense the impending departure. She began to venture closer to the cabin, her visits more frequent, as if urging them to hasten their preparations. On the eve of the release, Lucas found himself reflecting by the riverside, the journey from stranger to guardian now etched into his soul. The experience had changed him, reminding him of the delicate balance of life and the importance of coexistence with nature. The next morning dawned clear and bright, a new chapter waiting to unfold. The cub, now a bundle of energy, seemed ready to take on the world. Lucas, Dr. Amelia, and the wildlife experts gathered the cubs securely in a transport crate. The mama bear, a silent sentinel among the trees, watched as they made their way to the release site. Lucas felt a mix of emotions, pride in what they had accomplished, sadness at the farewell, and hope for the cubs' future. They had done everything possible to give it a fighting chance, and now it was time to let nature take its course. The release was a quiet affair, the crate opened to allow the cub to exit at its own pace. For a moment, it hesitated, then with a brief look back, it scampered into the forest, disappearing into the underbrush. The mama bear watched from a distance, her gaze lingering on Lucas and Dr. Amelia for a moment before she followed her cub, vanishing into the green depths. Lucas stood there, watching the spot where the bears had disappeared, a sense of peace settling over him. He had played a part in the cycle of life, a reminder of the resilience of nature and the bonds that can form in the most unexpected circumstances. The forest was silent as Lucas and Dr. Amelia made their way back to the cabin, an undercurrent of satisfaction flowing between them, a shared achievement in giving the bear cub a second chance at life. Their peaceful reflection was shattered by the sound of an engine growling in the distance. As it grew closer, the unease in Lucas's stomach twisted tighter. Poachers. He'd heard rumors of them encroaching on the area, but to confront the threat on such a day felt like a cruel twist of fate. Lucas motioned for Dr. Amelia to stay back as he approached the source of the noise, hidden among the trees. He spotted a group of men, their intentions clear from the traps and rifles they carried. Anger coursed through Lucas's veins, his newfound connection to the forest and its inhabitants fueling his courage. Without a second thought, Lucas stepped into the open, confronting the poachers with a firm, unwavering voice. "This area is protected. I've already called the rangers. Leave now, and you might avoid arrest." The men laughed, dismissing Lucas's threat and mocking him for defending the very same animals they wanted to trap. Behind the bushes, Dr. Amelia fumbled with her phone, searching for the number of the ranger who had accompanied them into the woods. She wanted to tell them to hurry, but also to keep the bears away from this location. They had just regained their health and freedom, and she didn't want them to lose them both again because of these poachers. In the meantime, Lucas and the criminals started arguing, their voices getting louder by the second. The poachers brandished their rifles, but Lucas didn't seem willing to back down. He had invested days in caring for the cub, in winning its mother's trust, and he didn't want to see them endangered again because of ignorant, cruel people. Lucas kept arguing with the criminals until a deep rumbling growl echoed through the forest. The mama bear, drawn by the commotion, stood at the edge of the clearing, her eyes locked on the poachers. For a moment, time stood still, then chaos erupted as the men scrambled to retreat. The presence of the formidable bear was enough to shatter their bravado. As quickly as they had appeared, the poachers were gone, leaving behind only the echoes of their departure. Lucas and Dr. Amelia exchanged relieved glances, the adrenaline of the moment giving way to laughter. The mama bear, that unexpected ally, offered one last look before disappearing into the forest, a silent guardian returning to her domain. As the excitement of the day faded, Lucas found himself at the riverside once more, the events of the past days replaying in his mind. The cub's rescue, its recovery, and the confrontation with the poachers had awakened something within him, a sense of purpose and a deeper understanding of the balance between humans and nature. Resolved to make a difference, Lucas decided to dedicate more of his time and resources to wildlife conservation. He would work to protect the forest and its inhabitants, ensuring that the sanctuary he had found here remained untouched for generations to come. And there you have it, the end of this beautiful story. Would you help a sick bear cub if its mother begged you to? Would you have the courage to confront armed criminals in the middle of a forest? Tell us in the comments below. Thanks for watching to the end.